My name is Harshani, and I lead the UN Foundation's Our Future Agenda initiative to support young people shape our global policy agenda. It aims to deliver impact for young people under 30, which, believe it or not, represent almost half of the world's population, as well as future generations, 11 billion people born in the next 60 years. Isn't that nuts? 60 years. Young people, no doubt, are living in a period of unprecedented crisis. The pandemic continues to threaten education and learning opportunities. Growing injustice and violence unravels the very fabric of our societies. And climate change and other long-term threats cast a dark shadow over our futures. It is a time of desperate need. This is the legacy that they stand to inherit if we fail to act now. But today and Saturday and Friday and weeks and months, and if not years before the summit, young people have been rising up to change this trajectory and stepping up as leaders in their own time in a period of emergency to change this path, to inspire hope, imagination, and courage when it's most desperately needed. The launch of the Unlock the Future Coalition is a powerful expression of this leadership. This high ambition coalition brings together 20 of the world's largest youth-led and youth-focused organizations with and for young people and future generations. Together, we cover and reach 800 million people across 6 continents. Isn't that impressive? This is where I would mic drop, but I think the AB team are glaring at me from afar. Transforming education is one of our core thematic priorities, including jobs, climate, gender equality, justice and peace, and future generations. As an army of doers, we are aligned to mobilize politically and strategically across these core areas, to support big global campaigns that deliver impact where it matters for people that are furthest behind, to demand more and better financing for young people, and most crucially of all, to provide a platform for intergenerational action with leaders and champions across sectors, across countries. Today's event is proof of our collective power, ability, and action to work together to solve the world's greatest problems at scale through the 2030 agenda, with young people at the forefront of change. Together, we can deliver real and credible impact. But we must act with a fierce urgency of now to do more than just say words at a stadium or podium. I'm not even at a podium. And go beyond just saying promises, but to act for a world as it should, as our children and grandchildren deserve it to be. We'll now hear from visionaries who have forged a powerful path and personal journey to unlock learning, not just for themselves, but for millions of others. It is with the greatest pleasure and with the greatest honor that I would like to invite Honorable Deacon Mitchell, Grenada's youngest Prime Minister since 1979. It's such a pleasure to have you today. I know so many folks in the crowd have been waiting for this moment.
Hello, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So next year is the SDG Summit, the halfway mark of the 2030 Agenda. How can we engage young people as designers of their future to achieve all 17 goals, especially education?
All right, thank you very much for the question. I think we have to recognize that the world's population is predominantly young. And I'll give an example. Africa's population, at least almost 1 billion, is under 35. In my own island of Grenada, 50% of the population is 35 and under. And although I'm a little over 35, I feel I represent, to a large extent, the population that is 35 and under. And therefore, I think young people are critical to the success of the sustainable development policies, and they must play a central role in the implementation of the targets if we are going to make it for 2030. And I think as leaders, the onus is really on us to ensure that we encourage and provide the enabling environment to ensure that young persons can feel empowered and that they can feel that they can propose solutions that can actually solve the challenges that we collectively face, but more importantly, that they will face in the several decades ahead. So, and I'll give an example. I mean, in my government, we actually have 3 ministers who are under 30. We've got the youngest minister in the Caribbean, who's 23 years old when she was made a minister. And not only she's 23, I want to make the point of stressing that she's also female. And I think that is also critical as well, because we need to recognize the role that women play, and particularly young women will have to play if we are going to attain the 2030 goals. And I think one of the things we really need to appreciate is that education is still not accessible to many young persons. And so, for example, in Grenada, I think my Minister of Education is here. We've taken steps already. We've only been in government for less than 3 months, and we've already taken steps to eliminate the barriers to free education at primary and secondary school level. We intend to implement policies that would allow young persons who drop out from school to get a second opportunity, particularly women, for example, who get pregnant in schools. So ensuring that persons actually do have access to free education, particularly at the primary and secondary school and tertiary level, is going to be critical if we are going to achieve these goals. And then it's also crucial for us to remember that education isn't confined to the formal education sector. And so it's important for us to recognize that non-formal education is just as important, and we need to make sure that we encourage that so that young persons, particularly for small islands, for example, your sense of identity, your pride in your history, your traditions, your culture, these things uniquely define you. And we should ensure that young persons are educated in those aspects as well, especially when we live in a world where you could be bombarded with cultures that sometimes are alien to you, given the scope of social media. And I think, finally, partnership is absolutely critical if collectively we are going to make a difference and improve. And I think from the context of a forum like this, it's critical that across the globe, we really partner with each other to make sure that we can try and achieve the 2030 goals.
Wow, that was a powerful message. I don't think I could have said that any better, or any other head of state could have said that better. And just an actual vision for empowering young people to be designers of their future makes me wish I was one of your citizens. If you had one goal, Your Excellency, or one wish you'd like to see come true to protect people and the planet, what would that be?
So I have a 10-year-old daughter who painted a mural which said the earth is on fire on our back wall. And I think she was sending the message that we need to be better stewards of our communities, our islands, our countries, and ultimately the planet, so that we can pass on planet Earth and leave it in a better place than we found it. And I think, my heart goes out, for example, to the folks in Puerto Rico who obviously would have been experiencing the effects of a pretty bad storm last evening. And I say this because there is a real probability that for islands like Grenada and for other Caribbean small islands, islands in the Pacific, that there may not be an island or islands to pass on. And we have to recognize that it's our actions that has led to this. But I want to be more pointed by saying for small islands, we bear little or no responsibility for that real danger or an existential threat that we face. And so it is crucial, I think, for the larger polluters, the developed world, to accept responsibility not just by tokenism, but by real action to ensure that we do take measures that will ensure that we can leave the islands that existed before for the next generation to inherit. And so I certainly hope come November in Egypt that we would move past a lot of the talking and actual real action will be taken to ensure that we can leave the planet a better place than we found it.
I hear you. We need more action, less words. So I imagine when you were at school, let's say 5 or 6 years old, and your teacher asked all your classroom mates, what did you want to be when you grew up? And I'm sure a bunch of kids raised their hand and said, I want to be Prime Minister. As a young head of state, what is your one tip for young people who want to make a difference?
Take action. The truth is, if you make a difference, even in a small way, with yourself, with your communities, collectively it causes a ripple action. And you may start off thinking it's just a small act, but you never know where it will end up. And I can perhaps use myself as the best example. I've not been in public life or political life for more than 10, 11 months. I made a decision summer of last year to get involved in public life and to join a political organization. And by October 31st, I became the political leader of the organization. And 8 months later, I became the Prime Minister of my country. So, if you'd asked me a year ago, would I be sitting here? Obviously, my answer would have been absolutely not. If you'd asked me a year ago, would I have been the Prime Minister of Grenada, I would have laughed you out of the room. And so I'm saying this to say that little actions, that little step, that first step, that act of courage or faith actually, truly does make a difference. And for particularly young persons, I think it's important to recognize that if you don't act, you will not make the difference in your own life and in the lives of others. So certainly my recommendation will always be to take action. Thank you.
Every step matters. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. With that, I am very happy and very delighted to invite our next champion visionary to the stage, Patrice Evra, a football legend. Patrice, thank you. Take a seat. Patrice, you just flew in today to attend the Transforming Education Summit. I bet you're a bit jet-lagged, right? Just a little.
Yeah, I am a little bit jet-lagged, but you always get energy for the young. I feel like an old man when I say to the young. But yeah, I was just in Ghana with the president of Ghana, and of course I am here today for a cause is really important for myself, is ending the violence against children. So I just had a speech on the panel, and is something make me feel like why I am on earth. Everyone know my career. I've won so many trophies, but I mean, being in front of you and talking is worth than any trophy I won in my entire career.
So you were in a room full of ministers of education and government, just in the summit. If you had one message to share with leaders, what would you say they should prioritize?
Good luck. That's the first things I will say. In a serious note, is ending the violence against children, education, to invest more in school. I have a personal experience where I've been sexually abused at the age of 13 by my head teacher. So the system fell on me. But that's why I'm like, I will never give up. And that's why I'm trying to spread that message to the young generation. No matter what's happening in life, you need always to fight. When you're born as a black person in this world is a disadvantage. And when you grow up in the street like myself, it's about surviving. And when you've been sexually abused at the age of 13 is a trauma. So what I want to say in those leaders, I don't want other kids to have the same experience I had when I was young. So we just need to invest more in the school to feel safe. Like for myself, I had an issue with my head teacher. So after that, it's a lot of consequence because I also, or the cause, the mental health is really important, equality gender. So ending the violence against children, mental health, equality gender, all those things are really important for myself.
Children need to feel safe to learn, precisely. So the UN Foundation, thank you. The UN Foundation is celebrating its 25th anniversary next year. It's a big birthday party for us. Where were you 25 years ago, which is approximately 1998?
Yeah. I was celebrating the World Cup. We won with France in the Champs-Élysées. So it's a great date for me, 98, yeah.
I bet. I can see that look in your face. It's still there. And what do you hope 25 years from now for your children, other generations, children, young people around the world, 25 years from now?
I need more support, more hope. When I see some young prime minister, it just makes me proud. And that's why we need to see. I've been in Nigeria and under the bridge, and they're playing like they call it the slum chest. And I say to those kids, no matter what you want to become, even if you want to be the president of the universe, it doesn't exist. Go for it. We need to push this young generation, but they have to feel safe. So that's my message.
Couldn't say that better either. So I have one final question to the both of you, Your Excellency, Patrice. You both have powerful stories of grit, determination, and passion, both coming from very humble beginnings. I would love if you could share a bit about your personal stories, each of you, and what was the point in your life that made the difference, where you turned a corner, despite how dark it was, or despite how light it was, that was a pivotal moment in your life. Your Excellency?
That's a pretty tough question.
I'm known for tough questions.
I think for me, when I entered high school, or just around leaving primary to high school, I sensed that despite where I'd come from, or the lack of water or electricity, or the fact that you had no indoor plumbing, my sense was that if I had an opportunity for education, which is why I'm happy to be here, and I champion education a lot, that it could make a difference in my life. And so in that sense, being fortunate enough to be in an island where, at least at that time, there was an opportunity to send me to a school where I didn't have to pay for education, or where my parents didn't have to pay. And I could tell you if my parents had to pay, I would not be here because they could not have afforded it. I think made the difference in who I am today. And so that's why I always champion the fact that if you do not provide education to young people, it doesn't matter how talented they are, it doesn't matter how gifted they are, that you are essentially denying them of an opportunity to really be a full human being and the dignity of living a full life in wherever they're from. And so for me, that, I think, has been sort of the pivotal moment in my life, and it's shaped my life, and I'm committed to ensuring that every time I get an opportunity to help someone get an education, and it doesn't mean just formal education, but education informally as well, I'm certainly willing to do everything I can to help them.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Patrice.
So yeah, my story. So I'm one of 25 siblings. I think my dad never watched TV, or he maybe lose the remote. So my parents divorced at the age of 10, and it's true, when my dad left the house, it was really difficult. At 13, at 10 years old, I was someone begging money in front of shop to buy a sandwich. Then football was everything. Football was everything, and I remember I had some trial in Paris Saint-Germain, and they were like, you're too small. You're too small, you won't make it. A lot of manager, but every time when someone was telling me I can't, I am a bull, I'm really stubborn, so that's when I'm going to prove to myself first I can do it, and after to the people. Then, I have a difficult childhood, especially when my dad left. I grew up in the street. And after, I've been to that school where after the school you could also play football. And my mom couldn't afford me to pay my journey every time. So that head teacher decided, he was living inside the school, and he said, your son can stay at my house. So yeah, that's what's happened. It was a nightmare every night because he was trying to abuse me, and he succeeded one night. Then I come back home and I say to my mom, I don't want to stay anymore to that head teacher. And she say like, why? And I never answered to it. After that, I become a professional. I play for AS Monaco. And I remember the police, they called me because they have other complaints about other children, and when they asked me, I was already famous, and I was ashamed of myself, and I was scared people won't believe me. And when the police asked me, have this man tried to do something on you? And I say no, and I lie. And I carry this all my life, and it really destroyed me emotionally because I couldn't trust anybody anymore, and I was also living as a coward because I was like, I should have said something. But at that time, that's why when people say, oh, Patrice, you're so brave, you're so courageous to talk about it now. No, I am not brave, I am not courageous. I just met the woman of my life, and she was able to open all my emotions. She was the key. And I started talking about that story just 1 year ago when I released my autobiography. I remember my mom was like, Patrice, you shouldn't put it in your book. I was like, Mom, this is not for me. This is for the other children. So that woman really, she's my everything. I say, woman, you are 10 years in advance than men. And I know they don't want to agree that, but it is the truth. You're special. Like my mom, she's my heroes. And today I get a point in my life where I finish all my coach license. Sir Alex Ferguson, a great manager, wanted me to come back to Man United to coach, but I just feel like right now I can give more than that as a human being, because the problem when you're a footballer player, even some people in this room can be surprised by what he's doing here. But no, I am a human being, and I know I can have more impact on other people than just kicking a ball around, even if I enjoy it. But now to be here today, and I was like, even before I come on the stage, I was like, wow. Can you remember that kid growing up in the street and now he's talking in the front of so many leaders and to try to make the difference? Don't make me shy, please.
Well, Patrice, I think you are the living embodiment of courage and bravery. You may deny it, but I think everyone in this room would disagree with you. So those are all my questions for the both of you. Any final thoughts, reflections you want to share with this group here? Both of you. Take away, any final thoughts?
Sure, thank you. So I think my final thought is really with me sticking with my theme, which is the importance of education. And there's still millions and millions of children around the world who don't have access to education of any type. And really, it's something that's shameful and something that we should, at every opportunity, really be looking to change. And certainly my commitment there, certainly for my island and from the region that I'm from, is to really do everything in my power to ensure that we give children in particular an opportunity for a full education. Thank you.
So So yeah, my final word will be similar, and education is key, but he also bring me back to ending the violence against children. 1 in 2 children, I say 1 in 2 children suffer of violence, experience violence, and this is half of a football team. This is half of a classroom. This is half of a school bus. So that's where I think we should invest. And to be fair, what a great priority to talk about. What a great privilege to talk about. That's why I feel blessed and grateful to be here and to talk again in all of front of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your courage, your determination. I think you've inspired every one of the person in this room to do more for this world. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Next, onto the stage, I'd love to invite Jaime Saavedra, who leads the education global practice at the World Bank and was Peru's former Minister of Education. Jaime, if you could come to the stage. Yes, you. He's in the middle. Yes, there's still people out there.
I think they didn't come to see me.
It's been a long day, so, but there's still folks in the room that really, they're waving. Can you see? They're waving. Hey, can we wave? Great. So Jaime, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming here and being with all of us. So I'm probably going to ask you a very tired question, because you probably think about this day and night, and then the next day and the next night. What is your vision for transforming education?
Okay, so do I need to use the? Do I need to use this?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
So okay, obviously that's a very tough question for 2 minutes, right?
Yes.
So just let me mention one thing, right? So as other people have been saying today in the morning, education is a human right. But despite that recognition that it is a human right, it is a right that we need to fight for, and it's not automatic, and it's not happening. So I think many people talk that the problem is financing, that we need more money for education, which is true. We need more resources for education, particularly in low and middle income countries. But actually, that's not the binding constraint. That's not the main problem. The main problem is people doing their jobs. And for people to do their jobs, we need to make sure that we keep politics out of education. That's the key thing. That all education decisions are taken with the objective of improving the welfare and the education of the child or young people. That any decision is not about bringing the people from the party to be a bureaucrat, or bringing people from the party or from whatever, any political affiliation to be a principal or a teacher. That, unfortunately, is still happening in many countries. As long as that happens, education will not improve. There has to be meritocracy in terms of bringing the best and the brightest, both to be a teacher, to be a principal, and to be a bureaucrat in education. Right? I've been in the other side of the table now at the World Bank, but I've been a minister in my country, in Peru. Right? And the key thing for me was the human factor across the board. Right? It was having the right teachers with the right motivation and the right passion, and having the right bureaucrat. Sometimes people do not like to use that word, but well, I'm a bureaucrat. I've been a bureaucrat when I was in the ministry in Peru, right? But you need to have those bureaucrats that are people with passion, and that they are there because they know that they can change people's lives. And I had many young people. I was very fortunate of being able to attract a lot of young people to work at the ministry, right? With that idea that we can change people's lives. So if we will bring the right people to education. Education is about human interaction at all levels, in the classroom, in the definition of policies. If we bring the right people, only those who really want to change people's lives, then we will make a difference. And that is critical. It's not like, okay, if we do that, it's better. No, it's not better. It's essential that that happens.
I love that, Jaime. The fact that you love the fact that you're a bureaucrat at heart, but you put people first, especially young people. What is one solution, Jaime, that you see can create meaningful and meaningful change in education?
There's no one solution, right? The silver bullet does not exist, right? However, what we need to worry about is focusing that the outcomes are happening. A key problem in education is that in many cases we try to figure out, so do we have the textbooks? Do we have the tablets? Do we have, are we paying teachers? Are the teachers attending? Yes, you need all those factors. All those things have to happen. But all those things have to be combined in an integrated way, in such a way that you have the right teacher with the right textbook and with the right workbook for the child, who is teaching the right curriculum in the sense that he's teaching at the level where the child is today, a teacher that understands that his job or her job is not to teach, actually. Her job is to make sure that everyone learns, that it's not the same, right? Not the ones who are sitting in the first row, right? But everyone, including those sitting in the back, right? So you need to have the right teacher with the right textbook, with the right curriculum, with the right mission. You have all those things combined, and you need to monitor that learning is happening. And that's the main problem in education that we face. We see that schooling has improved in the sense that, yes, more kids are in school. More kids are in school. And that has been an improvement in almost all countries. But unfortunately, even before the pandemic, almost 2/3 of those kids who were in school or who are in school are not learning the foundational skills. So we have these statistics that you must have heard during today. Before the pandemic, 57% of kids were in learning poverty. They were not able to read and understand a simple text by the end of primary. Learning poverty should be 0, right? Should be 0. All kids should be able to read. It's a low bar in terms of quality, but just to read a simple text by the end of primary, right? Even putting that low bar, we're at 57% before the pandemic. Now it's worse. Now it's worse. So things are just not happening. Right, so we need to focus on that outcome, the outcome of learning happening. It's not enough to have the kids in school, right? So these statistics of improvement in enrollment sometimes could be misleading. Parents think, well, there's a school there, there's a building, there's a teacher, there are books, something must be happening there, right? And unfortunately, in many cases, not much is happening there. So we need to worry about the outcome, right? Our kids learning. And when I say learning, we can measure easily if they're learning to read, and that's useful. But actually, when I say learning, it's learning all the skills that they need for life, right? Education is a very complex service, right? If you think, well, that's very difficult, right? The service of education is giving a child all the tools that she needs to be happy in life. That's the job of the teacher. That's very tough. That's very tough. But that's the outcome that we need to always monitor. That's the outcome that we need to make sure that it's happening, that kids are learning.
I mean, as you were speaking, it made me think of a journey that a young person that takes from start to finish through education, that impacts their entire lifetime. Yeah. So that was a powerful, powerful message. As a former Minister of Education, what is your one tip to other ministers to ensure this transformation meets the expectations of young people and children around the world?
Well, I wrote a whole chapter that it was kind of like, it was called Letters to a Minister of Education. So it could be a whole presentation, a whole speech about what
one tip.
Tips. But one is tough. But I would say that one is that 2 tips.
Two is fine.
So one is there are a few red lines here, right? There are things that must happen. One is that you need to worry about what I said. You need to worry about the human factor. Hence, you need to worry about having the right teachers with the right support, right? And with an internalization of the importance of her mission. Right? Remember, everyone here will remember by name that teacher who said something or did something when you were in 4th grade or 5th grade that changed your life. Everyone here will remember by name that person, right? Even if you are 70 years old, you will remember that person by name. Right? So that just shows how important is that human factor. And second, another red line is, which is related to the politics issue, right? Because this is about political commitment. In the same way that you need to reform your teacher's career in order to make sure that you have the right teacher, you need to do many other things. You need to have the right pedagogical methods, the right books, etc. But the other thing that you need to have is to make sure that the school is safe. And when I say the school is safe, it's not safe because the infrastructure has to be good or decent, which you need. But it has to be safe in the sense that any girl or any boy must feel that that is a safe space for him or her to thrive. If that does not happen, even if we did the right things in terms of all the pedagogical side of the equation, if we have the right books, the right methodology, the right curriculum, we did all the right things there. But if the school is not safe, either because of an attitudes or behaviors of the teacher, or because of bullying of the peers, then you will not learn, period. It's that simple. It's that simple, right? So safe schools, and that's something that has changed actually in the strategy of the World Bank and the education strategy of the World Bank. Safe school is not an add-on. It's not like, okay, it would be nice to also to have that. No, it's a must-have. You need to have that, because if not, you will not have learning, and with that, it will be, if you don't have a safe school, you won't be able to give any child all what we were saying, right? All those skills that you need to give her in order to be happy in life.
Now, I'm dying to see this full presentation with all the tips you have for all the ministers. I think we need to get that publication out there. So we have a little bit more time, but just one last question I've been dying to ask you is, what was your favorite topic at school when you were a kid?
Okay, it was not PE, right? It was not PE. Although when I was minister, I reinstated physical education that was left out of the curriculum. I brought it back, right? We said, no, you can teach a lot about perseverance, discipline, teamwork, the ability to handle success and failure. You can do that with sports and physical education, right? But I have to be honest, that was not my favorite. I couldn't say that I have one favorite. I mean, because I liked a little bit of math, I liked history, I liked science. That's why it was very difficult for me to choose what to study when I left school. I had no clue what to study. I had no idea, right? Engineering, lawyer, economics, I didn't know. Medicine was another option because my father and my brother were doctors. So all were options. So I didn't have one favorite, but yeah, no, it was a mix. It was really a mix. There was not one favorite. I should make up something, but
you probably should. I think you're an all-rounder.
I'm sorry.
Maybe all the teachers liked you. Well, thank you so much, Jaime, for your time, your passion. We will see you in a year's time at the SDG Summit for sure. Thank you so much, Jaime, for your time.
Thank you so much. And just wanna add, it's all on you guys, because when I say, well, you need to take politics out of the equation, and when I say this is about political commitment in countries, it's about you, because it's about society in general, and more important, young people, right? Making sure that change happens at the country level. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye. I'd like to invite our final champion, Chido Mpemba, the African Union Youth Envoy, a fierce champion for young people with the grit, passion, smarts, and beauty to match. Chido. Thank you. Thank you, Chido, for coming. So you started your tenure almost November last year. Time goes fast. I'd love to hear how it's been so far. How's this crazy roller coaster going for you?
Wow. First of all, I'd say it's such a huge responsibility. I mean, we all know that Africa makes the largest demographic as the youth. right? And that's such a huge responsibility to have so many young people, over 870 million young people, looking up to me to ensure that their future is secure. But what I realize is that I cannot do it alone. And that's why I'm making sure that I work very closely to the member states, the 55 member states that make up the African Union, and ensure that I also work with the young people. I'm actually joined by a number of young people in this room today that are also supporting this journey and came all the way to ensure that we fully represent the youth of Africa. I'm joined by young people that have come from Cameroon, from Namibia, in this room from Tanzania, in this room from Morocco, in this room from Nigeria, in this room, you know. So it's such a huge responsibility, and I'm just so grateful that young people get to walk this journey with me, but looking not just to now, but for the future generation too, because the future generation also matters, huh? Yes, and it's something that also needs the private sector to be on board, the international development organizations to be on board, and we need the political commitments that are coming from the policymakers and the decision makers themselves. So I'm so grateful that I get to be in that position to ensure that I realize the voices from the 55 member states and ensure that change comes to Africa. And this is the Africa that we want, the Africa for young people. We often hear about Aspiration 6, you know, which is almost similar to SDGs. And it talks about an Africa whose development shall rely on the potential of its women and its youth. And we need to ensure that we move from less speeches to more concrete action. And I hope to do that in my position.
So Chido, what's next for you in the next sort of 6 months to 10 months? What are the big milestones you're facing?
Well, there's quite a lot, actually. As you might be aware that we just recently concluded on our 10-year implementation plan for Agenda 2063, and we're moving on to the next 10 years. And I believe that next 10 years, we need to work that next 10 years with the youth themselves. As we look for the successor, I'm really lobbying that the successor will be a decade of the youth, a decade for the youth, which is the next 10 years to come in that implementation. But going beyond that, you know, I actually just recently concluded on a youth engagement tour. And the idea of the youth engagement tour was to visit various countries and talk to young people on the ground. So the first part of it was youth engagement with the youth town hall. That was following a survey that we actually had. And from the survey, what was coming out is that, you know, education is important, public health is important, climate change is important. And we thought it's important that we then sit down with the young people in the town hall and get to hear their recommendations and get the solutions from young people themselves. But secondly, also looking at community engagements, let's not forget that not everyone has access to information, not everyone has access to technology. We still have young people in marginalized communities, which is why it was important that I physically visit various communities, rural villages, and sit down with young people that are actually affected the most from the impact when it comes to humanitarian issues, the impact when it comes to climate change, just to ensure that their voices are also included. And lastly, this concluded with political commitments through policy engagements, where I would go and I'll sit down with the head of states, with the ministers, with the people that are actually making the decisions on behalf of the young people when it comes to policy. And I say, this is what I found on the ground. This is what young people are saying. Can you make sure that it's incorporated in policy? Now, I bring this up to what is next, because we're now rolling out our plan of action for the office. We call this year the year of setting the foundation. I'm sure you might appreciate that this role is fairly new within the African Union. I think we're just 3 or 4 years old within this role. But there was a vacuum in between. We had COVID-19, as well as a few challenges. So we call this year the year of setting the great foundation, because for anything, you need a foundation, you need sustainability, you need a position where it's not about me, but even after I leave, it can continue and be sustainable. So that has been what we're focusing on this year. And then for next year, it's a year of deliverable. And looking at that plan of action, it had to be grounded to what the young people were saying themselves. So that is what is next. When I go and I lobby on behalf of my fellow youth leaders in the head of states assemblies, when I speak to the cabinet, taking this seat as the youngest diplomat in the cabinet, I realize that it has to be grounded on the voices of young people. And now I can confidently go and say, look, when I'm saying this, it's because I know I've heard from the young people themselves. I've gone to this village. This is what the young girl is saying. So we now need to look at it from now, but also in terms of the future generation, how they can be, how they will be affected with the effects of climate change, education, and public health. I mean, if we speak about vaccination, for example, we actually were exhibiting today through Advocacy DC, which is a technical agency of the African Union that focuses on public health on behalf of our member states. And this is because currently when it comes to Africa, vaccination equity, we're sitting at 22% of people that have been fully vaccinated. And we realize that this affects our youth. So it's something else we're looking at to say, how can we upscale when it comes to vaccination intake and vaccination equity for young people? But you find that there's a correlation when it comes to public health. It also, in turn, affects economic development, same as climate change. It's a multisectoral, thematic way, and we really hope that, we can work with all stakeholders in terms of, how we can bridge this gap and create something that's very sustainable for our youth, which are the now and also for the future generation.
So Chido, you sound like an architect, a constructor, a builder. This is exciting. I can't wait to see what the next year has for you. You were mentioning your listening tour and so many communities that you visited that can't make big conferences like this or the SDG Summit next year or others around the world. What is your one tip for those young people that can't come to conferences in Geneva or Stockholm or New York? What is the one thing they can do to make a difference?
What I'll say is never underestimate whatever that you're doing at any scale. It could be in a community, it could be, in a small group of young people, but do not underestimate the impact that you will make. I mean, I started from somewhere. I started in a community. I come from Zimbabwe, from a very small city called Bulawayo, and I had a passion to serve within my community, and I made sure that I did that. And this opportunity opened for me through that serving, And you never know what door can open for any young person who's in this room on a global platform. But while saying so, do not underestimate the impact that you make in your own community and in your own country, because that counts too on the statistics and the demographics when we're talking about the impact we're going to make on a large scale in Africa. Yeah.
Thank you, Chido. Thank you so much for your time, your energy. If you follow Chido on Twitter, she is constantly from one continent to the other, so follow her. Sorry, I did a plug for you. Thank you, Chido, for your time and energy. Give her a clap.